My duty today, as you begin your annual fund drive, is to deliver what's known in my trade as the Sermon on the Amount. Some of you may recall that I've been cited by the seminary that gave me this stole as the evangelical rabbi of liberal religion. So let me begin with a story from that tradition. That seems particularly fitted to Petaluma, because when this church was built, you may know, this was known as the chicken and egg capital of California. Well, once upon a time, a devoted old Jew was celebrating the wedding of his daughter to a fine young man, who at the wedding feast said to him, "Now that we're relatives, let's join together in doing a good deed, a mitzvah." We both know that Yitzhak and his family are having hard times. He's a good man, but he is even too poor to pay his share for a place in the synagogue. And their children won't get the spiritual education that ours did if we don't help provide for those who can't afford the cost of the shul where our good deeds are all inspired. So let's raise some money together for our congregation. Excellent idea, said the older man. Let's do it together. But I ask that we never refuse any donation that anyone offers. And the younger man agreed. So they went door to door. Many people gave generously, but when they came to one of the wealthiest homes in the town, they were greeted politely, but when they explained their purpose, the rich couple just sighed. He went for his purse and gave just a token donation. She went to her hen house and returned with just one little egg for the poor, she said. And the older man thanked them warmly and even blessed them profusely, and they went out onto the street where the younger man almost exploded. Those selfish people, they could have given so much more. They insult us by giving tokens, and yet you bless them? Remember, said the father-in-law, we agreed not to refuse any donation. And they continued asking. They were almost back from some of the poorer parts of the town, approaching the synagogue, when the rich couple came up behind them. We're sorry, they said. We've been talking and we've been looking for you. Please accept more from us. And they handed over a small bag of silver and 2 live laying hens. The older man said, God bless you both, you good, generous people. God bless you. But as soon as they left, again, the younger man fumed aloud. They could have given us a purse of gold and flocks of chickens. And still you bless their stinginess? Patience, my son, said the older man. And as they continued collecting and were just about to return to take it all to the synagogue, the rich man caught up with them again, and this time held out a sack bulging with gold, saying, my wife has sent a whole flock of her best chickens to the rabbi's wife to help feed the poor. Forgive us for how little we gave you before. Of course, God bless you again, said the older man. And the donors went away with joy on their faces. The older man then turned to his son-in-law. Now I should tell you what I know about those people. You see, once they were very generous, but then one Shabbos, as they were coming out of the shul, a beggar approached them, and they found that the only money they had with them was a single copper coin. And so when they gave what they had, as the Talmud teaches, the beggar threw it back at them and cursed them in the presence of all of their friends, who laughed at them as stingy and shook their heads. And after that, their hearts hardened. They gave, but only what the Talmud required. Give what you have. But just as a spiritual path can spiral downward, so too it can also spiral back upward again. And when they were blessed for a small gift, the good impulse to be generous grew in them. And when they were blessed again for just a bit more giving, the capacity to be truly generous was again released in them. And each gift that they gave and were blessed for made the next one possible. So our willingness to receive whatever they gave with blessings restored them both to their inner goodness. So come, let us tell the rabbi the results of our good deed, our mitzvah, because I don't think we've helped just poor Yitzhak and his family and others like them. We also helped two people grow more generous and more joyous again. And as a result, that congregation prospered and was able to help more people. But which came first? The chicken or the egg? This old parable asks that question in a different form. Which comes first, the material giving or the spiritual growth? It's probably best illustrated by a more modern and actually true story. Who's from First Church in Portland? Liz. You may even know the truth of this. Marilyn Sewell, who helped to grow that congregation, was my intern minister. She brilliantly, when she first arrived, in response to a homophobic ballot initiative in Oregon, wrapped the whole block in a ribbon and declared it a hate-free zone. She even persuaded the Roman Catholic Archbishop to join her in standing on the steps of the Unitarian Church, saying that hate is a very poor way to build beloved community. So many people came to services that she desperately needed to expand both the budget and the staff of that congregation, and the board agreed. So there was no funding the budget appeal. Instead, they just asked old folks and new folks alike to place themselves somewhere on the spectrum of fair share giving, a guide to which is in the order of service this morning. This was before QR codes, by the way, Jody. So everyone got a physical pledge card in the mail or found one in the pew on Generosity Sunday to place in the basket that was up on the chancel. Marilyn was sitting up there, pleased to see that one of her newest members, who was a younger gay man who'd done very well in high tech, was one of the very first to rush forward and place his card in the basket. But she then worried when she saw that he went back to a pew and sat down to an older woman that she knew as basically homeless and a regular at the church's help for the homeless, and was often, let's face it, a bit smelly. Could this turn off the young man? The woman was fumbling with a card and an envelope and a few dollar bills that she pulled out of her dress while whispering to the young man. And then, to Marilyn's fear, she went forward with her offering, with the young man following right after her, who pulled his card back and altered it. Only after the service did she learn that the homeless woman had told him that she was giving up the cost of a meal every week. To help this place that's feeding my soul, she put it. And the young man had rushed forward to retrieve his pledge card in order to add to the $2,000 that he had marked initially another zero, closer to the fair share of his far greater income, and a sign of his deeper commitment to a congregation that he recognized as devoted to fairness and justice and compassion for all. Now, I want to assure you who are new here that no one in Unitarian Universalism is ever going to tell you how much you have to give. We regard such things as deeply matters of personal spiritual conscience and circumstance. We don't do one-size-fits-all formulas, whether it's tithing or in Islam, you know, it's called the zakat, which means that each year you should give 1/40th of your total net worth. Or even the Buddhist teaching about how we should recognize that much of what we have has probably directly or indirectly come through the suffering of others, and therefore we should do everything we can to build communities that reduce human suffering. Now, here we try to maintain what I call a guilt-free zone, while encouraging you to give not what's left over, but a little bit closer to what's right. I think of a call that I got some years ago from my older daughter, Erica. I think some of you remember me telling you that my wife, Gwen, is a priest in the Episcopal Church. And Erica was raised in that tradition because we had told the two daughters, you can go to mommy's church or daddy's church, but you can't stay home. And Erica was a little bit high church. When she was 4, I found her with a towel draped around her neck as she marched with the Episcopal hymnal in her hands, upside down around the piano, singing the Hokey Pokey. Confirmed by a bishop in mommy's church, she surprised me when in grad school, working in DC, she phoned me up saying, Dad, I've tried the Episcopal churches in this town and they're boring. And then I went to All Souls Unitarian, and it's exciting. Lots of young folks, more people of color. I'm joining, but don't tell Mom. I'll tell her myself. I have a question, though. Tomorrow I'm going to the new member session, and they want to know what I'm willing to give in terms of time and treasure. And I'm going to join their tutoring program for some of the kids in the neighborhood. But how much should I pledge? And I replied, well, Erica, I'm proud of you. I'm glad you know that the free church, free of creed, that is, isn't free of need. So what did you have in mind? I was then stunned when she named a number that was about 5% of her salary as a Senate aide, and gulped and said, well, I think that's a generous start, given your situation, your student debts, and the uncertainties of the future. As you can, of course, just try to grow as generous in spirit as I know this means you want to be. I'm even more proud these days to say that that young woman is now the president and CEO of the California Association of Public Hospitals and Health Systems. She is a full-time crusader for healthcare for the neediest. This past week, she was in Washington, meeting with the 3 members of our congressional delegation who aspire to succeed Dianne Feinstein in the Senate, where Medicaid will have to be defended. And she's pretty well paid for her advocacy, I might add. It's a tough job. Last Sunday, after hosting a Saturday night dinner party that she cooked herself for 24 people, donors to the church in San Francisco that she belongs to, and where she now chairs the Committee on Ministry, she got on that flight to DC at 8:15 on Sunday morning. And last year, when the city church faced a $300,000 hole in the budget because we had lost so much rental income during COVID, yours truly, on the stewardship committee, proposed that those of us giving the top $300,000 in the budget, who probably do so mostly from savings and investments rather than from current income, investments that grew during the pandemic due to Fed rate cuts, that we all do what Jeanette has done, double our pledges, at least for a year, to fill the gap. I did it. Erica did it. So did almost everyone who could possibly see their way clear. Now, there's another old story that comes to mind as I talk about my own efforts to be generous. A pig and a chicken are walking down the road together. They see a billboard advertising bacon and eggs at a diner at a bargain price. "Wow," says the chicken. "Look at that. Together, through marketing, we can now feed even more people." "That's easy for you to say," says the pig. "With you, it's a contribution. With me, it's total commitment." As obviously it is in clergy families. But I'm not asking for total self-sacrifice. I'm more like the liberal Presbyterian author Fred Buechner, who once referred to himself as a part-time Christian, full-time pig, just snuffling and groveling at the trough of life. And I'm also glad that I'm just a consulting minister, not dependent by a long shot on what you compensate me. Most ministers never feel entirely easy about preaching to their own congregation about the cultivation of generosity as a spiritual virtue. It seems too self-serving. But finally, knowing that everyone, when asked for a contribution, feels a little chicken, there's a terrible old story about a church bulletin that at Easter asked all of the members to come forward and lay an egg upon the altar. Now, we're going to announce the results of this campaign a month from now on Easter, April 9th. My only hope is that whatever you choose to give, it's not a goose egg, right? Unless you're just visiting us today, in which case, as with the regular offering, we hope that you will just give us time to inspire, well, as these four newest members were inspired, to make this your spiritual home and one that you feel worthy of your commitment. You know, last September, when I first started preaching here, there were only 90 members of UUP. This, I believe, brings us to 109 today. 108? Well, 103? Okay. Diane is keeping close count. But that increase is so heartening. The question is, which came first? Perhaps the generous gift and challenge that this building represents? What will come next? I foresee even greater growth in numbers and in spirit in the coming years, until at last this building is renovated to be fully accessible, energy efficient, beautiful, and full, most importantly, of soulful, generous people who not only love one another in this place, but who also serve in many ways, helping and transforming other lives near and far, becoming a religious center with a wide and ever-widening civic circumference. Which comes first? It's up to you. Call this the spiritual egg that I now lay upon the altar. All I ask is that you don't be too chicken. Give as much and as generously as you possibly can. Rock. And amen.